Now with the latest weekend headlines, it's the ITV News.
America backtracks on Joe Biden's remarks calling for Putin to be toppled. As the Ukrainian fightback continues, the US Secretary of State tries to clarify his president's comments.
As you've heard us say repeatedly, we do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter.
We visit a village near Kyiv, almost completely destroyed, as the Ukrainian army says there's no sign of a Russian retreat. We'll hear police arrest a man after a mother was stabbed to death while her children were at school. And can Benedict Cumberbatch's The Power of the Dog win big as Hollywood gears up for the Oscars?
This is ITV News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. US President Joe Biden's Secretary of State has been forced into a rapid clean-up operation after his boss called for Vladimir Putin's removal from power. He said America had no policy for regime change. The comments have provoked an angry response from Moscow, who insisted it was for the Russian people to decide. Well, in Ukraine, fierce counterattacks continued as President Zelensky criticised the West for the slow delivery of arms. Geraint Vincent reports.
In the borderlands, the battle for Ukraine rages on. In a part of the country where the Russian invasion began, a Ukrainian counterattack. In the diplomatic standoff on either side of this war, meanwhile, American officials have been trying to clarify their position after their president described Vladimir Putin as a butcher who cannot remain in power.
I think the President, the White House, made the point last night that quite simply, President Putin cannot be empowered to wage war or engage in aggression against Ukraine or anyone else. As you know, and as you've heard us say repeatedly, we do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter.
The Russian Defense Ministry released footage of what it describes as its airstrikes on Ukrainian ammunition stores. But it is Russia's bombing of cities and how to stop it that Ukraine's president is most concerned with. Mr. Zelensky criticised his allies in the West who are still pondering whether to supply his armed forces with fighter jets. If only, he said, they had 1% of the courage shown by Ukrainian soldiers. Two of those soldiers were brought home to Lviv to be laid to rest today. The Ukrainian defence of this country has been valiant and it continues to be extremely effective, but it comes at a painful cost. Among the mourners, defiance.
We have not 20 or 30,000 army. Today, 40 million Ukrainian people, huge Ukrainian army. Only victory. I believe in our victory.
But in the immediate future of this war, a stalemate seems most likely, and the soldiers' sacrifice won't stop. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Western Ukraine.
Ukraine's armies say they've seen no evidence of a Russian withdrawal from around Kyiv. It follows last week's claim by Moscow that they were refocusing their forces on the eastern Donbass region. Well, our global security editor, Rohit Kachru, has been to one village about an hour from the capital, almost completely destroyed by Russia's bombardment that has remained under Ukrainian control.
Shevchenko survived, but not much else did. A statue of the Ukrainian poet still stands after almost everything else was wiped out by a Russian airstrike. The library was hit. Residents take the books they might have once borrowed. The town hall was destroyed too, and the shop for kids, and the pharmacy, and even the off-licence. Bishiv is a village 1 hour from Kyiv, and it tells two stories. The crater reveals the force of Russian might. But there's a story of failure too. More than a month into this war, life of sorts carries on. The Russian troops never arrived, although plans were laid to stop them getting in.
It looks like an earthquake hit. There is complete destruction absolutely everywhere. But maybe the most interesting thing to see is not the fact this place was flattened, but the fact it wasn't flattened into submission.
In the capital, monuments are being protected as history is rewritten. Because, met with a fierce resistance, Moscow now says it no longer wants to focus on the capital. But the Ukrainians don't believe that.
We cannot trust them. At the moment, we don't see any withdrawal of Russian troops from certain areas of Kiev.
Because you needn't go far from Kyiv to see the area around it was in Russia's sights until not long ago. And the strategists protecting the capital believe nothing has changed. Rohit Kachu, ITV News, Bishiv.
Let's return to Geraint in Lviv. And Geraint, we heard there Ukraine's army say they've seen no sign of a change in Russia's strategy, but there was a warning they may attempt to effectively split Ukraine in two.
Yeah, and it came just before an announcement that another round of negotiations will take place in Turkey tomorrow, according to one of the Ukrainian negotiators, that is. These are the two teams who've been talking throughout the conflict, but this will be the first meeting they've had since Russia announced it was refocusing its offensive on the Donbass region in the east, a region which includes the key port city of Mariupol, which has been subjected to such a terrible siege. If the Russians are hoping to create a reality on the ground there where they control that territory, which they can then present as a kind of fait accompli in any negotiations, well, I don't think it's going to work. Ukraine's military intelligence chief says Russia, as you've mentioned, now wants to split Ukraine in two by solidifying its occupation there. And he said that they will face guerrilla warfare if they try and do that. Don't forget, Ukraine has committed some of its best troops in the east. They still defend Mariupol. So any talks which start with the suggestion that Ukraine gives up or surrenders territory in that part of the country are probably doomed to fail.
All right, Geraint in Lviv in Ukraine, thank you. To news here now, and a man has been arrested on suspicion of the murder of a mother of two in East London. The alert was raised after she failed to pick up her children from school. Helen Keenan is there for us. Helen, what more do we know?
Well, Lucrezia, is that detail, isn't it, about her two young children that makes this even more shocking. There is a real sense of disbelief here in this community in Bethnal Green. Now, what we do know is that the police have released an image of the victim today, and they have identified her as 40-year-old Yasmin Begum. Now, as you say, concerns were raised on Thursday by the school. They knew that Yasmin had dropped her young children off in the morning. It's only about a 30-second walk from here, but she'd failed to pick them up, and that's what caused concern. They contacted the police, who forced their way into the property, and that's when they discovered that she had been stabbed to death. Now, this weekend, a post-mortem examination has been carried out, and detectives have arrested a 40-year-old man in Stratford on suspicion of her murder. Now, they are still questioning him. Now, today I spoke to friends of Yasmin who didn't want to come on camera, but they really wanted to get a sense of just how lovely a person she was. She was very generous. She would give food to neighbours who were in need. She would play with her children out on the street. They would see her. And on the day that she died, this friend told me that she'd come around to drop off a present. Now, their thoughts today are with Yasmin, and they are very much with her children, who today, on Mother's Day, will be spending it without her for the first time.
OK, Helen in East London, thank you. Police have named a woman who was found dead at a property in Yorkshire on Friday. She was 35-year-old Kirsty Ellis. Early investigations show her body had been in the property in Stanningley for a number of weeks. A man and a woman, both 35, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Two people are being held in custody over a bomb scare in Belfast. The incident interrupted a peace event on Friday. The Irish Foreign Affairs Minister had to be evacuated after hearing gunmen forced a van driver to take what he believed was a bomb to the venue. The Chancellor has hinted he's considering more support for hard-pressed families struggling with the rising cost of living amid soaring energy bills. Well, David Wood is at Downing Street for us this evening. David, Rishi Sunak facing pressure not just from opposition parties but from his own MPs too.
Oh, Lucrezia, there is certainly a sense of unease amongst many in the Conservative Party. I've spoken to a number of backbench Tories who want the Chancellor to go further and give more support on energy bills and announce it ahead of May's local elections because there are a lot of criticism of the policies from opposition parties. Today, Downing Street denying that there is a rift between Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak over the issue. Now, announced in the autumn, many households will receive £350 to help with rising energy bills. Some of that, though, will be paid back in the coming years. The Education Secretary said today that that cash will help, but said that if more is needed, it could come.
Of course, we have to keep it under review. Absolutely right. That we have to continue to look at this because energy prices are volatile.
And they're certainly going to go in one direction, aren't they?
But it's a big package, and I think it's important that we now deliver that package.
Now, Treasury sources tell me it is just speculation that they are already working on a package of extra support on rising energy bills, but crucially are not denying it. Already, there is a lot of cross-government work going on to look and monitor rising costs, and I am told that will look at what levers could be pulled to try and help struggling households, particularly going into the autumn as the energy price cap is expected to rise in October. The Chancellor has said today he can't protect everyone completely from rising costs, but he's doing all within his power. But certainly his critics believe he could and should do more.
All right, David, for now, thank you. To sport, and England's cricketers have lost another Test series. They were thrashed by 10 wickets by the West Indies in Grenada. England lost the series 1-0 to follow their 4-0 Ashes defeat. But despite the poor run, Joe Root says he intends to stay on as captain. And Chelsea have equalled the biggest ever away win in the history of the Women's Super League. They won 9-0 at Leicester, a victory that takes them above Arsenal to the top of the league. Finally, Hollywood is ramping up for the big night at the Oscars, finally returning to full capacity after last year's socially distanced event. Jane Campion's Western The Power of the Dog leads the field with 12 nominations. Kenneth Branagh's Belfast has 7. Our arts editor Nina Nana is there at the Dolby Theatre for us this evening. Nina, just a few hours away. Excitement building.
Yeah, you know, it definitely feels like the usual hustle and bustle of the Oscars red carpet, but it's been a bit of a rocky road getting here. Mainly, will COVID stop any of the guests and nominees from walking this carpet in just a few hours' time? I have to say, though, many of the categories this year are so close to call, it should make a really exciting watch, and the organisers are hoping that it will be that hogs the headlines.
Will it be Netflix's brooding Western, The Power of the Dog, which has 12 nominations in all? Or is this the year of Apple TV's Coda? A drama about a hearing daughter living with her deaf family. Whichever gets the night's big prize, Best Film, it would mark a first for streaming services.
I want speed.
Here we go. Not that any of that bothers Beryl.
Art. I'm obsessed. All I ever wanted to do was to go to art school.
The Welsh factory worker who's the creation of British animator and director Joanna Quinn. Now Beryl could net Joanna an Oscar for Best Animated Short.
You know, the really funny thing is that Beryl is just so unglamorous, you know, and she's come to the most glamorous place on the planet.
One former Oscar winner is calling for the night of celebration to reflect on the situation in Ukraine. Sean Penn has been filming there and says President Zelensky, a former actor, must be allowed to address the guests somehow, or there should be a boycott. LA's Ukrainian community, screening films from their home country to raise money this weekend, say a message from President Zelensky should be included.
I strongly believe that he deserves to appear with his being present at the Oscars event. And I'm pretty sure he's already penciled in the program.
Get everyone together and get rounding people up, man. It's happening. It's happening now.
Politics has often found a place at the Oscars. One British nominee has a hard-hitting short film starring Riz Ahmed about immigration, racism and identity.
I think it says something about the moment we're in, that people are, are willing to embrace those kind of subjects, and not only embrace them but kind of champion them.
Will nominees who've had COVID, like Sir Kenneth Branagh, his film Belfast has 7 nominations, be well enough to attend? The red carpet awaits.
Well, it all starts, as I say, in just a few hours, and then it's all down to winners and losers, and perhaps it's the Oscars, the inevitable controversies.
Great stuff. Thank you. And that is it. I'm back with the late news at 10. Until then, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.